To discuss the real issues affecting the Tasman nations, this is Trad Tasman Talk, jointly produced by the Unshackled.net and rightminds.nz. Now, here's Tim Wilms in Australia and Dieuwe Boer in New Zealand.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final Trad Tasman Talk before the Australian federal election. It is Friday, the 20th of May, 2022. It is 6 p.m. here in Melbourne, where in 24 hours' time, the polls will close on the East Coast. I'm Tim Wilms, Editor-in-Chief of The Unshackled here in Melbourne.
And good evening to everyone. I am Dieuwe Boer for rightminds.nz here in Auckland, and it is 8 p.m.
And we are live on the Unshackled and Right Minds YouTube channel, as well as on the Right Minds Facebook page, and of course on the interactive entropy software, where you can ask a direct question and send through a super chat. I noticed that those in the live chat have noticed I'm wearing glasses. That's because, well, I'm going blind, and normally I'm short-sighted, so I need it for seeing long distances. But clearly my eyesight's getting really bad that I can't even read the the screen in front of me.
In the pre-show, I told him that his IQ went up by 10 points when he put on the glasses. So it's
but unlike Homer Simpson, I didn't find them floating in the toilet.
And tonight I was running a little bit late, so in addition to my gin, I also have some ice cream here. So if you see me duck away to take a bite of ice cream, that's just because it's just a bit pushed for time this evening.
A few in the chat have been on the booths handing out how to vote cards. I assume for freedom parties. Lady of Charlotte it also says that everyone on alert for monkeypox. It's a real issue, because yes, everyone's going bananas over it at the moment, because it arrived in Australia today. We had, at 2 p.m. This afternoon, there was both a press conference with Victorian health officials and also New South Wales with their health officials, because there's one confirmed case in Victoria and one suspected case in New South Wales. So this is the health alert that our Chief Health Officer, it actually wasn't issued by him. It was issued by Associate, Professor Deborah Friedman, Deputy Chief Health Officer of Communicable Diseases. So this is the key message, that monkeypox is a rare disease that is caused by infection with the monkeypox virus. There have been several cases of monkeypox reported internationally, and local transmission has occurred among these cases. There is currently one case of monkeypox identified in Victoria, a man in his 30s who recently returned from the United Kingdom and is isolating away from the community. Contact tracing, that word again, is underway to identify close contacts who may be required to quarantine. Monkeypox does not easily spread between people. However, it may occur through skin-to-skin contact, contact with infected surfaces or items, and respiratory transmission. Clinicians should seek advice from Vidural and consider testing monkeypox in return travelers with compatible symptoms. And it says who is at risk. So they've been seen outside of endemic countries. In the past, it's been typically due to international travel. Local transmission is, however, suspected among the international cases. There may be increased risk for people who have direct contact with someone with monkeypox and demonstrating symptoms, and men who have sex with men, because many of the cases in the West have been found in sexual health clinics amongst homosexual men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not. They put that in there right at the end. But as far as I can tell in my 5 minutes of research about monkeypox, there is very little risk to the average person.
And I know a lot of people are rightly paranoid. Is this going to lead to another lockdown and forced vaccination campaign? The good news is that there is already a sterilizing vaccine against monkeypox. What I mean by sterilizing vaccine kills the virus. So the reason why smallpox was able to be eradicated, or so we think, is through sterilizing vaccines. And so we're told that Australia's already got some smallpox vaccines in the national stockpile, and we're offering them to close contacts because they still work even after you've been exposed to monkeypox. So that's the good news. There's already a vaccine.
Mm-hmm. And the other good news, of course, is that we don't have to give you a COVID update this week because it's a monkeypox update instead.
Although, since we are approaching winter here in the southern hemisphere, and before everyone went bananas over monkeypox, there was the usual suspects warning about increased transmission because our cases in Victoria have been ticking up. There have been about 13 or 14,000 at the peak of the past 2 weeks, because they peak midweek and then drop off on the weekend. And so we had the Victorian president of the AMA, Roderick McRae, in the Age newspaper, wanting people to voluntarily wear masks at the supermarket, indoor theatres, and anywhere else there is a high chance of spreading winter viruses. So, but we had Dan Andrews this week say that he hadn't had advice to reintroduce masks, but he is mentioning that the flu is proving more of a challenge, and especially in young children. The Royal Children's Hospital has been emergency at peak capacity. And because, well, children have been locked down, haven't been able to go to school, playground shut, they haven't been exposed to flu-like viruses. And so there is concern about how hard the return of the flu will hit children this winter. And of course, luckily, there is a flu vaccine for everyone. And at the New South Wales monkeypox press conference,
it seems to work about as well as the COVID vaccine.
Yeah, Health Minister Brad Hazzard took the opportunity to grumble at all the people who weren't taking the flu seriously and to get their flu vaccination. The Q&A with the journalists, it tended to be more about the flu than monkeypox. The health officials said, no, there's, I don't see that you need to cancel your holiday to Europe over the winter. So what is it? Be alert, but not alarmed.
And we unfortunately do have another type of epidemic in New Zealand as well. It's been reported that there are some serious issues with young children learning and socializing and so on, because they have been isolated for so long. They've seen everybody wearing masks. So the development that the level of development and progression that we would expect to see in the under fives, under sixes is well below where it should be. And so that is a big damage that has been done. And the effects of that, again, these are the effects that we will continue to see over the coming years. Similarly, in New Zealand, a report on the state of the mental health situation in New Zealand was buried for over a year, has now been released, just showing how, as you would expect, how terrible the mental health facilities in New Zealand are and how they are deteriorating.
And that's also another reason why there is presentations at the Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne, and you're absolutely right. The evidence that was already there, it's now just being recorded just how damaging masks were for children. Another organisation pushing for mask mandates, including for children, is the Banette Institute in Melbourne. It's based at Monash University. They recently celebrated Ida Hobbit Day, and not a mask in sight. And they deleted the tweet, which is basically an admission of hypocrisy, that it wasn't a good look to them lobbing for masks and then do this big. I know a few of them have got cupcakes in their hands, so maybe it can be argued that they were eating at the time. But look, no social distancing at all.
Dare I ask what Ida Hobbit is supposed to stand for?
Oh, well, it's another, alphabet holiday. So International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, Intersex Phobia, and Transphobia. I don't know what the...
I already regret asking.
Is.
The O.
Well,
yeah.
Next month, June, is a whole month of LGBT pride.
Yes, I'm sure we're all looking forward to that. I believe in New Zealand we end up with 2 months of it. We have like a New Zealand month and then an international month. So not very nice. And
Jacinta, she's caught the Wu flu from.
Yes. Jacinda has managed to finally catch the Wu flu. I'm not 100% sure where she got it from, because she went to Japan.
Well, didn't she get it from Clark Gayford? Her fiance?
Probably.
He got it first.
Yes, that's right. So she did her trip to Japan and was fine, and came back to New Zealand and managed to catch it from Clark. And she was too sick to answer questions in the house and so on. And apparently she also announced that she had lost her sense of taste, which, I mean, we already knew that a long time ago. We've discussed her lack of taste on this show over the past few years. But it was a well-placed article in Stuff, right next to one about the price of cheese. So she announced that she was eating these cheese rolls, but she couldn't taste them. And of course, nicely, we can also see that the price of a block of cheese, some mainland tasty aged cheddar, is $21 in New Zealand, or some places Countdown usually. This is on the higher end of it. You can get cheaper cheese than that, but just to show the absolute insane inflation that we're facing here in New Zealand. The cheapest cheese that you can get at the moment is something like $13.50, nearly it'll be $14 next week, I guess, and that's for the cheap stuff. So she can't taste the cheese. Well, neither can we, because we can't afford it.
Maybe it's time for Wallace and Gromit to go back to the moon to get some cheese.
We could send Jacinda's puppet up there.
And now your mainstream media landscape is having a shift at the moment. There's been a stuffed leak.
Yes, a memo was leaked and sent to Cameron Slater from the BFD, and the memo written to staff noted that COVID was over, that people were no longer interested in engaging with COVID stories, and that it was time for them to move on, and they wanted to try and keep their audience, that they had gained all of those extra clicks, ad revenue, possibly government subsidy that they had gained during COVID. They wanted to keep that. They realized that the way to keep that is going to be they're going to have to move on from COVID. So they didn't want to say this publicly, but thankfully there was at least one employee inside Stuff who decided that was something that we should all know.
They'll get very excited when New Zealand has its first monkeypox case, which is inevitable. I saw there was a comment up here from Cresho. See if what Jacinta will announce monkey jockeys to stay off horses until further notice. Ardern. And it might be one last hurrah from, is he still in the job, Dr. Ashley Bloomfield?
Yes, he is until next month, I believe, end of next month.
So you might get one last swan song, or should I say monkey song?
I do hope that this one will blow over, and by the time we do the next show in 2 weeks, I'm hoping the monkeypox thing is over.
Well, even though it's not being discussed much at the election COVID policy. Albo was asked at the...
I don't see this holding up.
Yeah, asked at the press club by Catherine Murphy of The Guardian, what would you do to address the deaths as part of a new strategy? And Albo gave some waffle answer. Yes, we do need a new strategy. I'll request a brief and see what...
I'll read it out to you when my assistant brings me the binder.
But the new South Australian Premier, Peter Malinauskas, he has introduced $75,000 fines and 2 years in jail for COVID breaches. So he's done a deal with the Greens and SA Best, which is Nick Xenophon's former party. So this prison threat and fine threat under the Public Health Act, individuals who breach isolation requirements or ignore vaccination mandates and mask rules in high-risk settings, such as hospital and nursing homes, can be fined or face 2 years in prison. So if you're, it's going to be interesting, the prison conversations. What are you in for? My mask slipped off at the emergency department.
That's still absolutely insane. Obviously, we do have mandatory masks in New Zealand still in most settings, but thankfully, very little enforcement on that. There are a few places you should avoid. PB Tech stores are one of them. They have an absolutely insane mask policy, but most other places are very relaxed now, thankfully.
Well, we still have mask mandate for public transport, though there is very low compliance. And what is it? I heard from a source that when the ticket inspectors were on board, they obviously checked their tickets, but didn't bother about enforcing masks.
Which is good.
So there you go. And
we were speaking about the media just a minute ago. There is a new platform that has launched in New Zealand called The Platform .kiwi, and has been launched by Sean Plunkett, who was fired from the radio a few months ago now.
What did he do?
With a number of others. I can't remember what he did, but a number of them were fired for allegations of being racist or something, I guess. That's the common one.
Oh, the usual thing.
So he started up his own internet radio platform. Calling it platform, it's a bit awkward, but that's what it is, The Platform. And calling himself The Resistance, nice American callback. Obviously, this is the resistance against Jacinda, not the resistance against Trump. And they basically are publishing opinion pieces, news articles, actual journalism and radio every weekday. So if you haven't heard about them, it might be worth to check them out. And I suspect we'll see more stories from them as a, we'll say, independent news source. Obviously, he has some millionaire backers, but at least they're a little bit more centrist. By that, which means we'll get some maybe semi-right wing opinions every now and then.
Oh, well, good for him.
They're certainly Origin. They're certainly joining in on the info wars.
It looks more promising than what is it? News Corp's launched Talk TV with Piers Morgan's centerpiece show, which nobody's watching. GB News that launched last year, which it's a independently owned channel. It's got Nigel Farage and Mark Stein as their main presenters. That I would recommend to get some good British common sense talking. Tune into GB News.
And it's been good watching the Mark Stein shows recently. He's really been digging into vaccine injuries.
Yeah, and he's UK, so funny as well.
Oh, absolutely hilarious. I tuned out a little bit on the Ukraine stuff, but a little bit gung ho on Ukraine. But when he came back to the UK, he's really got stuck into vaccine injury compensation, actually platforming family members of those who were killed by the vaccine and so on. So Mike Stein is definitely doing a great job there.
Okay, I've just been sent through by Stephen Berry the updated Mr. Berry poll of polls. So I will just grab that. We still have one. That's him with the ding there. There is going to be one final news poll tonight, which will drop at about 9 p.m. But the polls have been tightening. So we had the final Guardian Essential, Ipsos, Roy Morgan, and what's the other one? Resolve Monitor in the Age. So there was a news poll last Friday night. There'll be one dropping tonight, and as you can see, it's closed there. This is the primary. So One Nation and United Australia, they've been pretty stable at 5%. United Australia around 3%. I don't know if the Greens vote is going to be as high as that. But as you can see, the major parties...
I think we often have a situation like that in New Zealand where the Greens, they poll a percentage point or two higher than they usually get on the day.
So we all remember 2019 when the polls were wrong and Scott Morison pulled off the election miracle. So obviously, he would be praying for a second miracle, and he's not a Catholic because if he did pull off a second miracle, then he'd qualify to be a saint.
No, unfortunately, he's sadly, it appears the most wishy-washy, spineless brand of Pentecostal you could have dragged up. So this is what I put into the description for the show, for the part of the promo, was, does he deserve to win? Because it certainly is possible that he can pull off another miracle victory as the underdog. He was polling behind every single day until the very last day, and then he wins again. But what for? What do you get out of it? What's the point?
Well, at the official Liberal campaign launch in Brisbane on Sunday, having a campaign launch in the last week of a 6-week election campaign, tell me how that makes any sense. But he announced the coalition's signature housing policy, which would be that first home buyers would be able to dip into their super up to $50,000 to buy their first home. It's a policy that Tim Wilson, the Liberal member for Goldstein, who's under threat from one of the Teal Independents, former ABC journalist Zoe Daniel, he's been lobbying for this policy for a while. Home first, super second has been his slogan, and Scott Morison has adopted it. It's better than Albo's housing policy for the government to own 40% of your home.
We do actually have that. That's super. Well, I say super. In New Zealand, we have KiwiSaver, but that is part of the something that the Labour Party actually brought in. I believe that you could dip into your KiwiSaver, or you could effectively empty it out to buy your first home. How effective it's been, I don't know. I do know people who have used some of it to buy their first homes, but usually younger people don't have very much in the way of savings yet. So. It's we'll see if it pays off. But it's interesting to see that it's considered more of a right-wing policy in Australia. We're here in New Zealand because it was introduced by Labour. At the time, it was quite heavily opposed by the National Party.
And so I mentioned that Tim Wilson is one of the inner city Liberal MPs under threat from the Teal Independents. It seems though that the Liberal MPs in Sydney will persevere. Dave Sharma in Wentworth and Trent Zimmerman in North Sydney against the Teal Independent. But Tim Wilson is in a real fight. So is Treasurer Josh Frydenberg in Kooyong, who is up against Dr. Monique Ryan. And all of these Teal independents receive funding from Climate 200, which was founded by Simon Holmes a Court, who is the son of Australia's first billionaire, Robert Holmes a Court. And most of the Teal independent are women. And one of their, campaign issues is better treatment of women in Canberra. But this was the exchange Simon Holmes a Court had with Liberal Senator Jane Hume at a Kooyong polling booth, and this was filmed by Josh Frydenberg.
Why? Just leave me alone, Simon. Please leave me alone. If you're suing me for defamation, Simon, I don't want to talk to you. Simon, you are suing me for defamation. Please leave me alone. This may have legal implications. Please leave me alone, Simon. You are the son of Australia's first billionaire. You are suing me for defamation. Please leave me alone. Leave me alone.
Hey, Josh, how you doing?
I agree with everything she says.
You agree with her lies? Would you like to repeat her lies?
Mate,
Why don't you get on your mate?
Leave everyone alone. We don't want to be talking to you. You are a litigious and vexatious.
at a 1.5 metre distance, mate.
Simon, leave me alone. You are litigious and vexatious. This may have legal implications.
Bullying the authorised by Ahurst Liberal Canberra.
Yeah, so pretty ugly exchange there. And well, Jane Hume, she's tough as nails. I mean, I doubt that she was like really intimidated by that, but certainly it's not a good look. There was a good comment by Evan Mohallahan of the IPA. No wonder they called the voices off, because you never want to meet the faces of. And
that was probably funny, but I didn't quite get the reference.
You don't want to see the faces of the independents or the people backing them.
Yeah, okay.
And Simon Holmes a Court, he has issued he's issued an apology. Oh, this stupid autoplay here. Hang on,
I'll ad blocked him.
I noticed it does the same thing on News Hub, where it just rolls over to the next story.
Yeah, it'll keep going. Yeah,
and you can't. There's no option to go back.
No, you'll think you're on one story, and then you come back to the tab later, and it's decided to move on.
Yeah, here we go. Here, so. Mr. Holmes a Court said in a statement, Senator Hume has repeatedly used her position to spread lies and misinformation about me for several years. Despite remaining calm throughout the conversation, it is clear that a public space was not the forum to ask her to retract her lies, and for that, I apologize to Senator Hume. So that's pretty backhanded apology.
Yeah, that's a non-apology. Absolutely. I did see on Twitter another video from Australian politics. Perhaps it's on your list as well, but
yes, Scott Morison had a clash with a kid he was playing soccer with in northern Tasmania, and this is how it unfolded.
Kids should go to school.
And now Scott Morison did well to react to cradle the boy, so to soften the fall, and I reckon his advisors in the background would be like, "Oh no!" But yeah, there was a high five afterwards. I was hoping there that Scott Morison didn't break his hand with the high five, but the kid was in good spirits afterwards and said that he thought it should have been a penalty, because they're very competitive, those young players.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I see Argentine play the league commentary. There was another clip. The one that I saw on Twitter was the one that had some professional commentary overlaid onto it, and it was good for a laugh. Certainly, if you can find that one online, it's definitely worth a watch.
Obviously, the Scott Morison haters were keen to say that, oh, just look at how reckless he could have, broken a bone of that boys. But most people have just laughed at it, especially the week after he called himself a bulldozer. I know that there was some who'd say, what is that, fake news that, he crash tackled the child. They weren't playing rugby, they were playing soccer. But we had Anthony Albanese finish the campaign as he started it with a gaffe and not dealing with the media's questioning. He did a runner on the press pack on Wednesday when he was in Perth, which was quite funny.
Thanks very much. And now Mark's going to talk.
All right. Thanks very much. Any questions for me?
Let's go. Mr. Albanese, will your deficit be higher or lower than the current?
I'm sorry, Alban. Yeah, I know. I'll just wait till all this madness finishes. Yeah. Do you want to wait a minute, maybe? Or?
It's honestly about that.
Isn't there a problem with transparency?
We're now we're following you for answers, Mr. Albanese, and you're now just not giving them. You have to answer eventually.
They chased after him like a current affair reporters do after a dodgy guy there.
Yeah, exactly. One of these, why have you been scamming people?
And you saw the WA Premier, Mark McGowan, there. He basically probably was thinking, and they call me a clown.
Yeah.
And because this was the day before Labor announced their costings, so they're going to spend an extra $7 billion at least in the next financial year. There's a few more that off-book spends, but they call them investments, not spending, because there'll be a return to the economy and to the taxpayer. That's the argument. But Albo actually tried to ditch his press pack by sending them all to Shadow Treasurer Jim Chalmers and Shadow Finance Minister Katie Gallagher's press conference in Canberra, where the costings would be released, while he ran up to, I think it was Brisbane or Sydney to try and ditch them again.
And you talking about spending, categorizing spending as investment. Here in New Zealand is much worse now. As of the latest budget, all of New Zealand's assets are now counted as counterweights to the debt. So they effectively factor all of our assets into the debt as if they've already sold them to pay for the debt, and that the entire country is bankrupt. So that's how we now calculate debt in New Zealand. And the big part, obviously, the big message in the budget has been a $350 check, some helicopter money that has come out here. And as Cam Slater on the BFD calls it here, no longer communism by stealth, which was a label used by John Key to talk about the working for families subsidies many years ago. But they are just handing out money. So you're now going to get over, if you earn under $70,000, you now will get a 27 a week handout for 3 months over winter. But by the time winter comes around properly, $27 a week may just buy you a block of tasty cheese, and that's it seems to be about it. So that's the response to 7% inflation from Jacinda Ardern is to just give people helicopter money, which for those who don't understand economics is the kind of thing that causes inflation. We also see here up the top here, one of the other handouts here is the government investing. The word investing here, $100 million by buying minority shareholdings in small and medium-sized businesses that need extra funds to expand. So the government is basically going to be buying up businesses, again, borrowing another $100 million to do all of this, become, public owners, getting a stake in the means of production, whatever you want to call it. That is the kind of investment that's going on here. And calling it communism may be a little bit overhyped, but absolutely crazy idea from the government to be handing out just checks to people, like, as if they were dropping cash from helicopters, and then also just to be buying up chunks of businesses in New Zealand. Things are not going to get much better if they are, the inflation was forecasted to peak, but I'm not sure the inflation rate is going to come under control at this rate. Origins point out as well, there's a fuel subsidy that's been extended for another 2 months, and same thing with public transport is half price as well for another 2 or 3 months now. The problem is once that expires, because petrol is back up over $3 a litre, so $3 a litre for petrol, once those subsidies expire, the temporary tax cuts and the subsidies for public transport, the temporary tax cuts on petrol are going to, at some point, if they don't make them permanent, run out, and that means your price of petrol is going to jump another 25 cents. So you'll be looking at, $3.30, $3.40, $3.50, whatever it is, in 3 months. So it is, the wonderful budget that for the first time ever basically expands spending, expands the deficit in a high inflation environment.
Are they still called well-being budgets? Because that was
no. This one is a cost of living budget.
They don't do the well-being budgets anymore.
No, I didn't see the term well-being budget being used to talk about it, other than Jacinda Ardern saying, well-being has been, the cost of living has been at the center of every budget that we do, and blah blah blah. Some meaningless waffle. But the last budget was the special wellness, whatever it was, budget that they've got to call this one a different name. But I actually have not seen an official name attached to it. They usually will do that. Basically is the cost of living budget, but that doesn't quite have the same ring to it.
Well, that was sort of the last Frydenberg Morison budget before the federal election. It was more just trying to buy your vote budget.
But we're still over a year away from the next election. So you're like, are you going to buy your vote? People are going to forget the money by Christmas. So I don't know what they're going to do next year. But if this is what they do in an off year, it could get even worse in an election year. Well, it will.
Colin has said the Liberal slogan is "It won't be easy under Albanese," and when he addressed the Italian-Australian Forum, I think that was called last night, Albanese claimed, claimed it was racist to have a campaign pun on his name. Even last federal election, the slogan of the Liberals was Bill Shorten is the Bill Australia can't afford him. Bill is an Anglo name. I mean, is that racist against
no, it's all right. You're allowed to be racist against white people. That's perfectly fine. But hang on a minute, isn't he white too?
Anthony Albanese.
Yes.
Well, obviously he's half Italian. I'm not sure whether his mother was Italian. Because, she took.
We won't have this conversation.
She took the father's name because she was a unwed Catholic in the 60s. So that's. Did you know that Albanese was raised by a single parent in public housing? Did you know that? Because he's nearly mentioned it in every state.
I can imagine. It's one of these jokes. We were talking about Mark Stein earlier. He makes the joke. I remember it was probably 2 election cycles ago in America. He's talking about how the candidates always talk about their background. So he had this one candidate going around saying, "I'm the son of a mailman," and so Mark Stein was making jokes every day. I'm the son of a mailman. I'm the son of the mailman. Do you know that have I told you, that my father was a mailman, and on it went.
The other line that he's used all throughout his political career is that I was raised in three great faiths: the Catholic Church, the South Sydney Rabbitohs, and the Australian Labor Party.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we had there was one. Well, it might be the last gaffe of Anthony Albanese, because he was asked about the cost of living pressures that Australians are facing, and this was his response.
Our borders are closed, Lisa. Our borders are closed. People are doing it tough. That's having an impact on employment figures. We know that that's the case.
Yeah.
But
As the borders have been open to Australians since November last year and were open to the world since February, unless he's giving away Labor's secret plan to shut borders again and get some use out of their quarantine camps that they've built. But
yeah, we've invested in those camps, Tim. We can't let that go to waste. And also the depending on how your election goes, the $350 that I was talking about earlier also goes to is sort of roughly what a one-way ticket to Australia goes for at the moment. So a lot of New Zealanders are currently fleeing to Australia, and that will probably increase over the next year. So if you stash away your $27 a week from Jacinda for 3 months, you can buy yourself a one-way plane ticket to Australia. Of course, you'll probably want to wait until you find out the result of the election tomorrow, just to be sure.
Although things aren't too crash hot with our economy, because obviously inflation has risen by 5.1% over the past year, but wages, it was revealed this week, have only increased by 2.4%. So real wages have gone down. So with all the inflation, everyone's got a pay cut, but unemployment is at 3.9%. But of course, that doesn't include the people who can't work due to vaccine mandates. And obviously, it's so low as well because they haven't opened the floodgates to the skilled worker migrants yet. It'll be interesting after the election. Whoever wins, they just sign off on whatever the business lobby wants, and flood the labor market.
And to wrap up tonight's gaffes, we did have a typo on One News's coverage of the budget. They announced to the world that we were going to be spending about 600 or over $600 billion on defense. So with $662.5 billion of extra spending on our defense forces, that would put our total defense spending not at 2% of GDP, but at 200% of GDP. So if that were Grant Roberts' real objective, it would be the start of a global New Zealand empire, because we could probably afford to take on most of the superpowers around the world with that.
It is that you could build, lots of, secret military bases underneath the mountains.
Absolutely.
And now, this isn't necessarily a gaffe, but it's a photo which you wonder what's going on here. So former Liberal Prime Minister John Howard, he's been wheeled out to marginal electorates. Here he is in Kooyong with Josh Frydenberg. And it looks like he's grabbing this voter, and it's like she's got a sort of smile, but it's like he's trying to shake sense into her.
Yes, well, as they get older, they get a little bit more honest too sometimes. I don't know if people saw the clip of George Bush. I didn't put it in the media for tonight, yes, because it wasn't really related to any of the topics, but it made me think of that with George Bush accidentally describing himself as the brutal and unjustified invasion of Iraq.
He actually, told the truth.
It was John. Yeah. I can't remember if John Howard was before that. Probably he was the decade before that, wasn't he?
No, John Howard was he was part of the coalition of the willing with George W. Bush and Tony Blair. George W. Bush described him as a man of steel.
Well, definitely putting the steel to use in that photograph.
He's 80, going on 82. I mean, he is.
Well, that was George Bush's excuse. He was like, "Oh, I'm 75." You know,
although he is
I'll tell the truth.
He still does his morning power walk that he was famous for as prime minister, and he's outlived his leadership rival from the 80s, Andrew Peacock, who died last year. They were the same age. Now let's move on to Victorian news, which obviously
it's always terrible, isn't it?
Yes.
No good news. Never any good news from Victoria.
Yeah, because it's either incompetence or corruption that is going on. So we finally saw some action on a damning report into Victoria's 000 system, which has actually been ambulance delays have contributed to the deaths of 21 people. So the Emergency Services Telecommunication Authority will be rebadged as 000 Victoria and will be moved to the Department of Justice and Community. So it'll be aligned with like the other emergency services such as fire and rescue and Victoria Police. So it was a report that was delivered by former Police Commissioner Graham Ashton. So the government said it reported in principle the 20 recommendations made by Mr. Ashton, which includes extra funding for more staff and changes to improve call taking and responses. So we'll see if this actually changes anything, because restructuring, rebranding, more money doesn't necessarily help, but it grabs a headline.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah.
And we've had Labor MLC Harriet Shing. She's shut down two upper house committees trying to ask questions about IBAC investigations into the Premier and the Labor red shirts rort of the 2014 election. In the first one, it was a question about why Daniel Andrews was privately questioned by IBAC. Harriet Singh, she actually pulled the plug on the live stream, and they had a meeting, and she came back and said, "We will not ask about personal matters." And the second one, she stopped. She didn't pull the plug, but she interrupted the questioning about of the ombudsman Deborah Glass about the red shirts probe, and the outgoing IBAC commissioner says, I need more powers and need more funding to do my job properly. And the governor said, probably because it's election here, yeah, we're open to that. And well, especially since federal Labor is promising a federal anti-corruption commission, and they have, well, one of their MLCs pulling the plug on parliamentary proceedings.
Mm-hmm.
And
never open to investigating the corruption when it's when they're the ones behind it.
And it should be mentioned that Harriet Singh is married to Dan Andrews' chief of staff Lizzie Ratcliffe. They're the power, one of the power couples in Victoria.
And we have a similar kind of nepotism and corruption that goes on here in New Zealand when it comes to the local government minister and Nania Mahuta. Same thing. Her sister sits on the boards of the various organizations that she's restructuring, and her husband work as a contractor and his business works on various reports, such as the He Puapua report, for instance, to talk about or to implement co-governance in New Zealand, and to build projects that the local government ministry approves, which is obviously the ministry that she runs. So that kind of nepotism goes on here in New Zealand too, and whether or not we get an investigation into that, we will see. But it is a vision of the future. Perhaps I think we're going to see a lot more of that.
Now, the Victorian Liberal opposition are doing themselves no favours and are under real risk of alienating their base if they decide to expel next week the parliamentary party pro-life MLC Bernie Finn, who has been 100% pro-life throughout his parliamentary career, which began in 1992 when he was the member for Tullamarine. And it all stems from a post where he said that he was praying for abortion to be banned in Victoria. And he also opposes abortion in the case of sexual assault. So Wendy Francis, the Australian Christian Lobby's National Director of Politics, said the opposition was making a mistake by planning to send Mr. Finn to the crossbench. Unless there was some big misconduct, the party should not be dismissing a democratically elected MP. They need to spell out what the transgressions are. And it's conscience vote in the Liberal Party as it is in the Labor Party, life issues. And it mentions in this article some of his other colourful memes on his social media comparing Dan Andrews to Hitler. I mean, there's been thousands of Victorians who've done that.
Nice. He sounds like the only good senator you've got. Or representative.
Described a former female staffer as a rat, shared several pro-Trump posts during and after the Capitol Hill riots in 2021, and described Andrews in an indecent position with a goat in a public toilet.
He sounds like ultra MAGA.
And so, what is that? A Liberal MP told The Age he was given his final chance in September. He was told off by a number of colleagues. There's only so many times you can put up with an absolute moron. He has been given too many chances. We've tolerated far too much for too long. So the D-Day is next Tuesday at 8:30 a.m. So the motion was signed by opposition leader Matthew Guy and the rest of the leadership team, David Southwick, the deputy, and the upper house leaders, David Davis and Georgie Crozer. So, yeah, this will be incredibly self-destructive if they decide to do this, the Victorian Liberal Party.
And we are now in the last 10 minutes of the show. So if you do have any last minute questions or super chats, please do send them through and we will answer any of your other questions in the chat. I see one about the election live stream. I'm sure you'll repeat that at the end of the show though.
Yes, certainly will. So I might as well say it now. 6 p.m. Melbourne time tomorrow night when the polls close on the East Coast. It will be live on the Unshackled and Wilms Front YouTube channels, as well as the Unshackled Facebook page. Now, we've got time for a few other things, and a lot of people have been suspicious about this sudden monkeypox outbreak, given that the WHO is trying to get this pandemic treaty signed by all the nations, though monkeypox is not a novel virus. It was the first human infections were in, was it Uganda in the Congo in the 1970s. That's apparently the Congo strain. That's the more lethal one, and so they've done the sequencing for this monkeypox in the West, and it's the West African milder strain, or you could call it the Nigerian strain. So they've done
it's a scam.
Well, they've been able to get the sequencing done quickly because, well, the virus wasn't discovered in communist China like the Wu flu was.
Didn't come from one of those Ukrainian biolabs, did it?
Yeah, well, we don't know. There was a few monkeypox cases in the West last year, isolated cases, and wasn't there like a truck crashed and it had lab monkeys that escaped, and a female driver had to go to hospital. I think the first the discovery of monkeypox was in lab monkeys when they were studying polio. That was in 1958 in Copenhagen. But Scott Morison was asked about the pandemic treaty, and this was his initial response.
The World Health Organization meets on May 22, and on the agenda is a potential pandemic treaty which would allow WHO to direct countries in how they control pandemics. Would you consider signing up to that and handing over any controls to the organisation?
I have always been supportive right from the outset and was criticised heavily, I stress, heavily, mocked in fact by the Labor Party for saying the WHO should have those powers and those authorities to be able to go and deal with pandemic situations, because we all know what happened at the start of this pandemic. The problem is we don't know what happened at the start of this pandemic, and I was the one calling to ensure that we had an independent process to understand what happened so it couldn't be repeated. So I have been in the vanguard of those moves internationally to ensure that there is greater protection for world health, to ensure that those world health authorities can come and understand what's going on and be able to assist countries to be able to prevent the spread and outbreak of major infectious diseases. Now, we'll look at the text of all of that, but we have been amongst the countries that have been positive about these sorts of changes. Have to look closely at what the detail is in these things, as you always must. But the idea that countries can just say, no, you can't come in and have a look at a pandemic that's about to break out and actually affect the public health and the economy of the entire world, as we saw with this pandemic, then I think it's only sensible that that's an area of international cooperation that is very, very important, and I've been consistent on that. And remember, the Labor Party mocked me for saying that that was a good idea.
Yeah, so he's basically saying, "Who come on in?"
Go on, yeah. Didn't the WHO try to bury the entire pandemic situation at the beginning? Weren't they the last ones to admit that something was going on? Weren't they the last ones to say, first, maybe we should do something?
China's line that there was no human-to-human transmission. It was just related to the wet market, and withheld the genomic sequencing, or the genomic sequence.
Yeah, exactly. Which is insane. And then to say that you would cede your sovereignty to that organization, right? To the very organization that failed, miserably, that is so corrupt that it wouldn't, didn't want to offend the Chinese government, and buried the pandemic story for, like, I don't know, it was at least a month after it was global, that they were still denying it was even a thing, and that was the WHO. Absolutely insane to say that you should hand over anything to them.
Albanese was asked the same question, and he, gave another waffle answer, said, do we believe in, multilateral dialogue and cooperation? It wasn't so, amazingly, he wasn't so as eager like Scott Morison was for the WHO to just come on in. Though Scott Morison, as he always does, he backed away immediately when he probably saw the backlash, and because he also wanted to wedge Albanese. He said no more, we're going to have no more lockdowns and shutdowns. We've moved past that. We're living with the virus now. And so he went on 2GB later with Jim Wilson and said it was rubbish that we were going to sign this treaty. So again, you can't trust Scott Morison. This was the guy that still claims there's no mandatory vaccination policy, and that there's nothing I can do for the states to enact these things, even though, I promise that there's no more lockdowns and shutdowns. So again, like, he's proven himself not to be trusted. This is one of the things against him. He's a proven liar.
And we talked about the platform at the beginning of the show. Sean Plunkett hosted an interview or a discussion around the WHO treaty, and he said that nobody from the government would come on the show to even discuss the treaty, because they said they didn't want to give any kind of oxygen to conspiracy theories. So we can't talk about the WHO treaty because talking about the WHO treaty would encourage conspiracy theorists. So that was the official government line.
There's a question here on entropy, a super chat from Absolute 3 for $5 US. Actually, the same question, 2 lots of $5 US. So thank you very much for that, Absolute 3. Asks, have you ever considered bailing Victoria, Tim? Yes, I have. That's certainly crossed my mind. I was tempted to move to New South Wales in 2021, but that got locked down just as hard as Victoria in 2021 with Gulag Gladys, as she was known. She's gone now. We have the globalist libertarian Dom Perrottet in New South Wales, though he's proven himself to implement things such as QR codes just to get the media off his back. But yes, we do have a state election in November 26, 2022. So I think definitely, like, I've been a person, who's wanted to stay and help save my state. I grew up here, but yes, there could be, there might be no hope if Andrews is re-elected this election. And well, obviously there will be a huge change. In Australia's the governing of Australia after this federal election, if there's a change of government. Anthony Albanese, in a sign that he's getting a bit cocky, said that because there's a quad meeting next week, and so Albanese said if he wins, he'll get himself sworn in with Foreign Minister Penny Wong, and they'll go off to the quad immediately.
And we did have mentioned the monkeypox connection to Ukraine recently. We did have an international story that in some way had some links to Australia and New Zealand this month as well. The Buffalo shooting in the United States, obviously a guy there who claimed to be inspired by Tarrant, who was Australian born and New Zealand's largest mass murderer. What is of interest there, of course, is that that Tarrant was most likely trained by the Azov battalion in Ukraine, and they just announced their surrender, I think about 48 hours after the shooting in Buffalo. No direct connection there necessarily, but we did see both of those stories disappear very, very quickly at around the same time, and obviously a big conflict there for Western countries to be funding the Ukrainian neo-Nazi battalions, and then at the same time having mass murderers in New Zealand and the United States be inspired and directly trained by those same Azov militants there in Ukraine.
Yes, the war in Ukraine, that seems to have wound down and is just it's focused on the disputed Donbass regions. Well, there's been an 8-year civil war there, but we have Finland and Sweden wanting to join NATO, and Putin and the foreign minister Lavrov basically said, we don't care, given that the idea of the war was to stop NATO expansion.
An interesting thing about NATO and why they care so much about Ukraine is actually the size of the Ukrainian army, which is mind-bogglingly large compared to the rest of Europe. So the Ukrainian army was actually larger than the entire European, the number of battalions that the rest of the European nations combined could field. So if you add a few more NATO countries like Finland and Sweden, and you get 2 or 3 extra battalions, whereas Ukraine has like 40 or 50 that it can field, which is why I guess the Russians felt extremely threatened by Ukraine. After this is over, I don't think Ukraine is going to be fielding a particularly large army. And whether or not NATO is going to expand will remain to be seen, because Turkey sees that it has a prime opportunity to get a little bit more leverage over the rest of Europe.
It's like a legacy member of NATO.
Like, hey, hang on a minute. Turkey is part of NATO. Oops. But obviously, Turkey is a more valuable member of NATO as well. They don't want Turkey to be aligned with Russia and Iran. But then, if they want to keep Turkey happy, in terms of military and strategic importance, Turkey is more important. And thank you, Origin, for the correction there. I was talking about battalions. I should have been talking about divisions, which is the correct military term for what I was just talking about.
We've had the global stocks plummet, fearing hyper inflation, and we've seen one nation default and is having severe fuel and food shortages, Sri Lanka, and it serves as a warning to the rest of the world. The US is out of baby formula, and Biden has warned that there could be food shortages, but there should be.
And very possibly there may be food shortages in countries around the world because of grain shortages, and that will have cascading effects, fertilizer shortages, and so on. You don't know what's happened in Sri Lanka now. Can easily shift to other countries, because we're all on the brink here. One of New Zealand's most well-known economists, Michael Riddell, actually said about Sri Lanka, they fell over now, but in fact, we're all doomed already. Nobody's repaying any of that debt. At some point, there is the very real risk of all of our countries falling over.
And Sri Lanka is, it was formerly part of the British Empire. There's a common Commonwealth connection. Obviously, both of our nations and Sri Lanka love cricket. Two of our greatest freedom fighters in Australia, Real Rakshan and Tricky Tritty, Sri Lankan in ethnicity. Real Rakshan has joined Rebel News' stakeout at Klaus Schwab's Davos lair. There's going to be a meeting at the World Economic Forum. So we'll see if they can, get any comment. But obviously, we'll wrap it up now with an election reminder. Make sure that you vote. If you haven't already voted, because it's compulsory in Australia, you can get fined.
You go to prison if you don't vote.
And there's been a last minute a change or clarification to the COVID-19 secure telephone voting, because if you there was this gap that if you were COVID positive before Tuesday, I think Wednesday at 6 p.m. and hadn't applied for a postal vote, then you couldn't vote over the phone. That's been changed now. So anyone who tested positive to COVID after 6 p.m. local time, Friday the 13th of May, can do telephone voting. There'll be online registration available until 4 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So if you test positive at midday. I wonder if what if you're positive or a close contact to monkeypox? Can you still have that service? Because obviously we've got some local cases.
Well, hopefully you're not engaging in any activities that spread monkeypox while you're at the voting booth.
Yes. What is it? Brad Hazard this afternoon was saying that it's party season in Europe, and so a lot of close contact. I think he sort of meant sex parties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that's another reason why I said this story this one's going to disappear very quickly.
As we've previously said with the gonorrhea outbreak, if you're worried about contracting monkeypox, the only lockdown that's needed is to lock down your pants. The only mask you need to wear is over your genitals. So make sure you cancel your orgies, though I assume that nobody watching this show had any planned.
No, certainly not. And on that subject, not that subject, but the election live stream that you were talking about before, I'm not sure if I will be featuring in that. I do have some plans tomorrow evening, but I will be, if possible, I might pop in later on in the evening to the Unshackled live stream. And otherwise, I will see everybody next week. Not next week, 2 weeks from now, I will be back. So the usual schedule. And definitely until then, everyone stay well behaved, as Origin has pointed out. No orgies. Wear your chastity belts, and so on. Just be wholesome and well behaved.
Yes, and so I'll see you all in less than 24 hours time. So it'll be hosted by myself, Stephen Berry, who has started the Stephen Inquisition on the Mr. Berry channel, 7 p.m. Melbourne time, 9 p.m. Auckland time on his YouTube channel. Also be joined by Kyle Kutazi and Septimus Kane as well, amongst many other people as well. It could be a long night, potentially could be a nail-biting night. But I remember from our we did in 2019 Kakabo's federal election night live stream, and I think it was clear from about 7:30 that night that the miracle was about to happen. Like, we're looking at the swings in Tasmania, Western Sydney, and Queensland. It's like Scott Morison's going to pull this off, and he did.
It won't be quite as exciting this time if it happens, though. But anyway, perhaps some good news amongst some of the independents or other minor minds.
We are hoping that Dai Lee, who is the independent running against blowing Christina Keneally in Fowler, who clearly, pitch is to put the foul back in Fowler, and she's certainly impressing the locals outside the polling booths.
And Dai Lee, they're right there. Get rid of the rats out of the system. That's another
That's very, very attractive look to the voters. She's no Sir Alex Ferguson with that gum chewing.
All right, good night, everyone, and until next time. Thank you for watching, and thank you for all of the comments. It's been a good night.
Yeah, stay safe, stay sane, and stay clean.
And stay free.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of Trad Tasman Talk. To keep up with the latest real news and analysis from the Tasman nations, visit theunshackles.net and rightminds.nz.